I'd like to do something a little different than I normally do to start off these sessions, which is I'd like to start off with a little bit of a healing meditation. Since we're talking about self-compassion and forgiveness, I think this might be a nice way to bring us into our hearts and open up a conversation that's perhaps a little bit different. So if you could close your eyes, and I'll do the same, and it may look a little weird, but I'd like you to close your eyes for a minute and put your hand right here on your chest. And if you want, you can put one on your belly. And I'd just like you to take a deep breath in to the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it for 4 and exhale for 4. And breathe in again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Inhale. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale. And one more time. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale. And as you sit here and you just start to focus on your breathing, notice what it's like in your chair, where your body hits the chair, how your feet feel on the floor, and keep breathing in and out. And what I'd like you to do is to imagine a color that is very soothing to you. Maybe it's yellow, maybe it's a light green, or a purple, or a blue. And I want you to breathe in and imagine that color is filling up your lungs, and exhale. And the next time you breathe in, I want you to imagine the color is filling up your lungs, going down through your belly, all the way through your toes. Breathe in that color. And exhale, perhaps a different color, a color of the gook that you're hoping to move out of. So inhale that healing color, and exhale a different color. For me, that color is usually sort of like an orange gray. I inhale actually the color of like a tropical ocean, and I exhale that orange gray. And I want you to do this a few times because it's hard for people with attention challenges to actually settle and to open up their hearts and sort of slow down the thinking in your head. So I want you to breathe in. Maybe picture yourself at a beautiful lake or ocean or mountain overlook, and breathe out. But continue to breathe in that color that you find soothing all the way down to your feet and up to the top of your head, and then breathe out the gook. Okay. And I'd like you to think for a minute while you're doing this breathing, what do you actually wish for yourself? What part of self-acceptance or forgiveness would you most like to see for yourself? Breathe that in and breathe that out. For me, it's about forgiving myself for the mistakes I make, the times when I lose it, maybe say something that I wish I didn't, or when I get activated. And just remembering to breathe in that color and breathe out the gook. So now that we're in this more open, centered place, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the theme today. Today our goal is to shift from proving yourself, from judging yourself as less than, from seeing yourself as unworthy, to practicing compassion and accepting yourself, warts and all. Breathe in that color again. Exhale the gook, and keep your hand right on your chest. So you're sort of holding on to your heart, giving your heart a little hug. We're going to practice laughter at our foibles and how to improve them, to learn from mistakes and move forward with kindness, to believe in the power of yet. I may not be able to do this yet. I'm learning. I'm practicing a growth mindset. And if we're talking about shame reduction and self-compassion, this is the core of a growth mindset, because we are supposed to make mistakes. That's what being human is about. So what is self-compassion? Dr. Kristen Neff, who is a leading researcher on compassion and has written some fantastic books, says that compassion is composed of kindness, treating yourself with care and understanding instead of harsh judgment, common humanity. You're a part of a larger whole. All suffering is not the same, but all humans experience pain and suffering in some way that's worthy of empathy. And mindfulness, the ability to be with things as they are and steer clear of avoidance, denial, or minimizing. Self-compassion means asking yourself, that part of you inside, what can I do to help you? Instead of what's wrong with you that you're feeling X or you did Y. It's about acknowledging any suffering you're having and trying to alleviate it. You stop fighting with yourself and you start embracing and soothing yourself instead. And so this means that you have a sense of who you are underneath the ADHD negative picture that you carry around. So the first thing that we want to do is to normalize who we are and our experiences, and to know that you're not alone. In these Facebook Lives on Fridays, we see how many of us are here together, learning how to live fully with ADHD. So you're part of a community of people, those who have ADHD, maybe those who don't, a religious community, a professional community, and to remember that everyone is wired uniquely. Is there even a normal anymore after all? Sometimes I'm just not sure. We all struggle with demons, judgments, and doubt. And we have to remember that people are supposed to get things wrong, to learn, to pivot, and keep living. So we're going to normalize. That's our first goal. The second goal is to understand the what and the how. Ask yourself, what has happened in your life that's led you to this place? What is an emotion, a strong feeling communicating to you? I know that when I'm anxious or I'm fearful, I need to ask myself, what is this anxiety red flag trying to tell me? What is it trying to show me? What's actually going on underneath that I'm anxious? And then I can ask myself a question. What would I like to do differently? How could I ask for support from someone else, or how could I give myself support, and what would that look like? We want to observe what's happening and be curious about it rather than condemning. We want to meet what's there with neutrality, with okay, this is what's going on, instead of, ugh, why are you this? Okay, we want to foster acceptance with that kind of neutrality. The third step is to identify stinking thinking and what to say back to it. You are not your thoughts, but you are the one who's aware of your thoughts and believes them. You can choose not to believe them or to take cover when you're mean to yourself. This takes practice. It also takes work. So forget about compare and despair, looking sideways at what other people are doing, and stick with the focus on where you've come from and where you want to go. When we have that negative thinking, when we're mean to ourselves, what I would like you to try to do is this instead. Now close your eyes for a minute. Breathe in that color, breathe out the gook, and see yourself at age 10. What do you look like? What's your hair like? What are you wearing? Where are you? See yourself as a 10-year-old. What would you most like to say to yourself as a 10-year-old? Let's say that 10-year-old falls down and skins its knee. How would you comfort that 10-year-old inside of you? This is the kindness that I would like to see you practice to yourself. This is the kindness that Dr. Neff is speaking about. And so we want to remember that when we're mean to ourselves, we're actually talking to ourselves as a 10-year-old with a skinned knee and not offering a Band-Aid or not offering a hug or not offering some soap and water to clean it up, but we're pouring vinegar on that wound. Is that what you want to do for yourself? So let's take a pause here. I'd like to hear some of your reactions to what's going on now. I'd like to hear from you. What is some of your stinking thinking? And what do you think you'd want to say back to it, to that small child inside of you? Can you think of things that have happened in your life that have led you to adopt this stinking thinking toward yourself? So please be sure to, write that in the chat. I'd like to hear from you. And what do you think your stinking thinking is? Where might it come from? Who might have said that to you? And what could you say back to it that practices kindness? So take a minute and write some of your responses in, because this is how we're going to build our community of support. Hi, Haley. Hi, Teresa. Okay. So while you're thinking about what your stinking thinking is, the things that you say to yourself that are mean, instead of what you say to yourself when that might be more soothing, I'd like you to think about something. Shame. So shame spirals lead to toxic waste dump of self-loathing. These block your compassion and your forgiveness. You blame and criticize yourself in ways that you've internalized as a child, from a parent, from a coach, from a sibling, from peers. Could you take this part of yourself and give it a name? What name would you give it? Maybe imagine what it looks like. Is it a cartoon character? Maybe the face of someone from your past who was particularly not supportive or kind, or maybe it's just a blob of color or energy. Combating shame is tough when you've had a lifetime of hearing or feeling like you're not good enough, like when you've been unaccepted by peers and deficient. But when you blame and criticize yourself, you actually worsen the shame. What we want to do is to externalize the shame, make it something that has its own name. It's a part of you, but not you, that you can talk back to. So I'm going to go to some comments now because I'd really like to hear them. So Joanne says, being shut down as a child, my opinion didn't matter. I never learned to make good choices. Alethea, I'm a starter but not a finisher. So Joanne, my opinion doesn't matter. Alethea, I'm a starter, not a finisher. Gail, family treated me as a black sheep. They don't believe in ADHD and anxiety. Yes, you spoke about that last week. So maybe what you might tell yourself is, my experience isn't real. My pain isn't real. Helen, I don't deserve good things to happen to me is one negative thought that resurfaces, particularly when bad things happen again, like I'm being punished. So that's really strong for a lot of people, particularly I think for women. I don't deserve good things, and it's a manifestation of lower self-worth, and that you deserve the bad things that happen to you because you're not perfect or you're not good enough. You look tired, you don't have much energy, you have a nasal voice. So that's ways in which you're not quite good enough. You don't make the cut. You don't look the right way, or you don't have what it's called being called stupid. Haley, I'm useless and always have been. Wow, these negative statements, it's so great that you're sharing them here because you are not alone. Harlan, hi. Mine was, everything I did was a reflection on my parents. Do nothing to bring disrepute to your parents. So maybe that statement is, you're an embarrassment. So these negative statements, these are really cruel, and they're hard. And they're hard to hear for me, and I'm sure they're hard for you to share. So thank you for the bravery in sharing that. These statements are all stinking thinking. These statements are not who you are, they're not what you are, but they're belief that part of you that grew in response to how you were being treated as a child. And so I think I think what we want to learn to do is to comfort ourselves when these statements come up, and we're, kind of almost hold ourselves, like put your arm around yourself and be able to say to that part of yourself, that character, listen, that thinking may have served me 40 years ago, but it doesn't help me anymore. So what I need you to do is that doesn't work anymore. So we got to turn the volume down on that. And the way we're going to turn the volume down on that is by basically being able to say something to that part that you're saying with your adult brain, holding your vulnerable, joyful, developing child. So when we think about what to say back to stinking thinking, I'm curious, I shared some parts of yourself that were really tough. Let's see, Laura said, you were weird. People don't understand me, so I'm weird. Kellen, excuse me, says you're living in a fantasy world, a reactive response to my sharing my goals as a child. So I'm a fantasizer, and what I want can never occur. Joanne, excavate those ghosts' old bones. That's right. So we want to be able to learn how to talk back to the ghost. So when I'm doubting myself, when I'm saying, you're too much, or you're things aren't going to work out for you, I have to say to myself, that's language that I was told to keep me in place, to keep me alive, and I bought it so that I could adapt to whatever dysfunctional situation I was in. But I'm a grown-up now, and I want to say something else, which is, actually, I have the tools I need to survive in any situation. I have adequate resources. And that's what I try to tell myself when that comes up, like, you don't have what it takes to deal with this. I say, that's actually not true. Let me tell you a time when I dealt with something, and I try to talk back to it. So of course you are worthy, but what could you say to that part of yourself that you would actually believe when the stinking thinking starts blasting its terrible message? If the stinking thinking were blasting its message, what would you say to that 10-year-old with a skinned knee? You wouldn't say, that's right, you hear that? What you would say is, I love you, I've got this, I'm going to take care of you. That's what's hard to do in today's world, because there are so many ways in which we doubt ourselves. You can go on your Facebook or your Instagram or your Twitter or whatever, and you can see in 1 minute what other people are doing and make yourself feel worse about yourself. So I'd like to hear from you. What do you say to yourself that actually you can believe? So Haley asks, how do you learn to believe it? Well, this is a really great question, because how you learn to believe it is by, my next point, thinking about what you like about yourself and writing it down. We have to have another voice, another part of ourselves that's actually stronger and louder than that stinking thinking voice, right? And that part of ourselves is going to come from parts of ourselves we really like. Okay, that has to be something that we hold on to, the parts of ourselves we really like, and that has its own name. And if you think about yourself as a 10-year-old, I'm sure that it's easy to come up with some things you liked about yourself. I was very friendly. I liked to try things. I always wanted to do a good job. So what are some things about yourself that you really like, or that you remember as a child you really, were positive about yourself? I'd like to hear about that. Positive affirmations, Helen says, particularly those I can back up with facts. So that's exactly what I'm talking about. That these positive affirmations, even though they sound super corny, actually make a difference. And you might want to write a couple, like 3 of them down on a Post-it and put it in different places in your house so you can look at it and refer to it. So I would like you to stop aiming for perfection and getting rid of parts of yourself you don't like. It's very hard to get rid of parts of yourself that were adaptive and helpful in your youth. But what you can do is shrink them a little bit, shrink the noise, shrink the volume of the voices of those parts. Joanne, you say you're very capable. Absolutely. Joanne, you say to follow the root of an emotional response. What's really at the root of it? Exactly. Breathe it and go deep. Dispute the negative thought, emotion. Right, so we want to get under that negative emotion and connect with who we are. Who that 10-year-old, that excited 10-year-old who loved, for me, I loved mint chocolate chip ice cream and going down slides and swimming in a pool or the ocean. So what about that part of yourself? Let's see, Dana says, generation I was brought up in and have a dad as a teacher, all about manners and etiquette, always being corrected, feeling like I never did it right, and was brought up very well and in a loving household. Yeah, so this isn't about whether your family was, abusive, or your household or your household was cruel. This is about what you created in response to whatever negative feedback you heard as a child. And so so feeling like you were always being corrected means the message that you got was, I never get this right. And that's at some level the message that you tell yourself. And these negative messages interfere with your ability to be compassionate to yourself. Joanne says you're going to reparent your inner child. And for what I'm talking about is we want to embrace our 10-year-old selves with the skin knee and offer soothing words when we mess up, when we wish we said something that, when we say something that we wish we didn't, when we're late, instead of telling yourself what a terrible person you are or a loser, to say, okay, I have trouble with time management. This is what I say to myself. I have trouble with time management. I'm doing the best I can. I didn't learn this as a child. It is a life task for me to learn how to manage time. And sometimes I get it right, and sometimes I don't. And that is something that actually makes me feel a little better, instead of angry at myself for what a loser I am that I'm late again. So Helen, you say you were always told Helen can't cope. Well, that's not true, because look where you are today. It's important to take note of your successes. And this is part of why I think it's critical to have a journal of some kind, whether it's recorded on your phone or you write it, and take stock of 3 good things in the day. They can be some things you did, something that happened to you, maybe you had a good hair day, but we have to increase those positive statements to counteract that part of ourselves that is so negative and critical. Helen, you absolutely can. Alethea, very compassionate with animals. Yes. Dana, your mom didn't let you fail. You can adapt. You can learn the skills to adapt to weakness. Absolutely. And that's a great thing to say to yourself. I also like this idea that, you can be very compassionate to your dog or your cat, and you may want to offer that kind of compassion to yourself, to that part of yourself that really wants to hear, you know what? I may stumble, but I know how to pick myself up, pivot, and keep going. So I'd like you to think about these things that you like about yourself, and maybe share some of those with us as you're doing. The goal here is not to get rid of your anxiety, which I've talked about, or to get rid of this, critical part of yourself, because it serves a purpose. It has served you in some way. Maybe it motivates you in some way, at a small dose, in an appropriate way. I'm talking about the criticism that actually really debilitates you and stops you from embracing your full self. So what we want to do is turn down the noise from this part, the stinking thinking part, and manage it more effectively. And so maybe there are some things about yourself that you'd like to see are different. Pick one thing, because we really can only change one thing at a time. And you can work on that slowly. Maybe there's a second thing that you can work on a little less. But more than that, it's just going to overwhelm you, and you're going to feel better about yourself because you're not making progress. Helen said, I'm great at caring for others, but often forget about myself. Can we talk about the strengths of ADD, strengths others can't learn? Yes, Joanne, I love that. So if you could put in the comment section some strengths of having ADHD that are inherent to you is so important. Colleen says, pivot and keep going, turn down the noise. Love this. I'm so glad. That is so critical for all of us, okay? So I'd love to hear you all share with me some of your strengths. Denise says, I'm very intuitive and find the silver lining when others are down. Woo! Awesome! Just having a hard time finding that lining when I'm the one that is down. Yes, it's very hard to find that lining when you're down. And so it's important to have some go-tos in that moment, whether it's a meditation app that you like, whether you make a playlist. I have a playlist of, I call them spirit songs, and they're just songs that kind of reach me in a deep place. I have a happy playlist. I have an angry playlist. These are all things that kind of help me manage my tough moments. And so, or someone to call, or can you journal? Is there a way to like go for a run? Keep a list of what you can do for yourself when you're feeling down. Be with yourself. One of the things that's really hard, and that we talk about, is that the more you try to avoid or deny or minimize your experience, the stronger it's going to get. Okay, because it wants your attention. It wants you to notice it, to be with it in some way, and that's important, to be able to hold yourself, to hold your 10-year-old with a skinned knee and say, it's okay, we've got this. Let's see. Joanne says, I've learned that with my kids. Intuitive, foresight, creative, hand-eye coordination. Fantastic. Dana, God doesn't make any junk. You're a child of the King and loved always. Thank you. I'd love to hear from you what you think some of your strengths are. Alethea, always told I talk too much, but strangers share and tell me their troubles. Alethea, I'm with you on that, because people tell me, you take up a lot of space, you talk a lot, but no matter where I go, people start to talk to me. Like, it's like I have a neon sign on my forehead that says, tell me what's going on with you, even though I haven't asked. So I hear you on that one. Michael Freestedt, I can't give up. You have persistence. That's fantastic. Paige, I'm very good at problem solving. Yes, because you're an outside the box thinker, so you can look at things in a lot of different ways. Joanne, never give up. That's great. That's amazing. Helen, I love my playlists. Music is a great outlook. I hear you on that. Attitude, this might spark some ideas. Thank you. Gail, I was told I was stupid, but found out later the elementary school tried to have me skip a grade twice. Oh my goodness, Gail. But I would have been in the same grade as my older sister, so my parents wouldn't let me. Oh. But I graduated high school 35 out of 350, so the top 10%. I actually am the one who actually finished college with 2 degrees. That is such a great anecdote. It's your life. That's so fantastic. And you are smart. And I think that's something that a lot of people with ADHD were told they were stupid, or people who are on the spectrum, or people who have a learning disability, because you don't learn exactly the way other people do. Joanne, high aptitude to learn new things. Fantastic. Joanne, I can talk to anyone with you on that. Harlan, I'm super fast at connecting the dots in practically everything. Yes, you have a fast processor. That's awesome. Alethea, you do matter. That's a beautiful thing to say to yourself. You matter. And maybe to think about who you matter to, because I'm sure there are people in your life who you matter to, even if it's your cat or your dog, maybe especially if it's your cat or your dog. Me too. I'm good at photography. Wonderful. You, Althea, you do deserve good things. Yes. I can hyperfocus. That's a gift for sure. I'm good with languages. I hope I spelled that correct. LOL. Thank you, Michael. That's great. Okay, this is such an amazing conversation. I'm so grateful for your honesty, because this is exactly what I was talking about in the beginning about normalizing, because we need to hear from our community about who we are, because we share so many of these traits and challenges. Gail, people always think I work in any store I go to and come up to me to ask questions. So you're very comfortable in your environment, and you look like you know what's going on. That's very cool. Thank you, Dana. Love making people feel that like outcasts, we feel like the belong and wanted. Yes, you do belong and you are wanted. And it's important to remember that and to think about that in those dark moments that someone mentioned, who actually loves you and who you could reach out to. Michael, that happens to me as well. Right. So you have moments where you feel like I don't belong, I'm not wanted, I don't matter. We all have those. That's not something that's happening to you uniquely. This is part of the human suffering that I was speaking about earlier. And it's part of people who suffer, people with neurodiverse brains who suffer about their unique wiring. So we all have value. Yes, Joanne, and yes, with the store, okay. And we want to be able to understand that, everyone's brain is wired uniquely, and unfortunately, there's a myth of normalcy. There's a bell curve, and many people share certain types. Functioning within that curve, but everybody's somewhere. We're not all in the same place, particularly at the same time. So what I'd like you to focus on, instead of what's not good enough about you, is the idea of wholeness. Being okay with your entire self. Being good enough as you are, with your warts, with your foibles, sometimes off balance, sometimes more reactive than you'd like, sometimes disorganized, sometimes stumbling over your words, but fundamentally perfectly imperfect as a human being, just like everyone else. But one of the challenges is that human beings like to compare themselves to others and somehow come up on top, and that can and I think what happens is that this myth of comparison actually exists for all of us. It's an act of compare and despair. You compare yourself on social media, you compare yourself at your son's soccer game, you compare yourself at work, and one of the challenges for neurodiverse kids and adults is that you don't come out ahead. Somehow you think everyone is different, i.e. better. And that's a myth that I would love to dissuade you of. Okay. Joanne says, I like helping others reconnect with things like chronic pain, and yogis used a bed of nails to pain to raise consciousness. I'm not sure I advocate that one for you guys. Started to tell everyone I meet to have a blessed day, and it makes us both have a better day. I love that. So, it's kind of like in meditation, if you're sitting there or you wake up in the morning and you're feeling terrible, if you just smile, if you just put a smile on your face, you might be able to shift that mood. To recontextualize things is very helpful. So as we head toward wrapping this up, I want to suggest something to you. And what I want to suggest is that you come up with a prayer for yourself, a meditation, a guide, whatever you want to call it. That's a sort of what we call a meta prayer in meditation. And this has to do with what you wish for yourself. And I'd like you to think about that. And I'll give you some prompts here. May I be safe? May I be happy? May I accept my limitations with grace? May I live with ease? May I find peace? What is something that you wish for yourself? One thing that you might be able to say to yourself, maybe write down on a little piece of paper next to your bed before you go to sleep or when you wake up in the morning, and say, may I be safe? May I be happy? May I live with ease? What would you like to say to yourself? Yes, Joanne, it does make a difference. And you don't have to meditate for 3 hours. There are lots of apps that can help you. Headspace, Insight Timer are both great resources. And you can do 5 minutes, you can do 10 minutes, but just something where you're able to kind of focus on that color of the light that you're breathing in, and exhale the gook, and say something to yourself. Pray, offer yourself a desire, a prayer. So what would you like to wish for yourself? What would you say if I were asking you to create a statement that you would say to that 10-year-old self with a skin knee? What would you want to say? And that would be loving, that would be kind toward yourself, because the fact is, no matter how much you hold out your approval cup, nobody can fill it for you. No one can fill it for you except you. And that is the challenge. And the way you fill your approval cup is by noticing the things that you do well, keeping a record of them somehow, and surrounding yourself as much as possible with people who really enjoy your company. So let's see. Michael, you say, I can sing even if my neighbors claim that that is not the case. Ha ha. Sing away. My point was living with chronic pain can be more than just suffering. Yogis used, I see. Okay, yes. Thank you, Joanne. I didn't understand that. Yes, absolutely. Living with chronic pain can be more than suffering. And I encourage you to, figure out how you can do that to elevate your consciousness. Gail, I'm trying to think of one good thing that happened every day inside the dwelling of the negative. Good for you, Gail. That one good thing is so critical. And if I remember, you also have a daughter with ADHD, so maybe that's something that she could do as well. Although often our children don't want to take advice from us, but I think that's helpful. Joanne, you say, I am love. Love is all that's really. Inhale universal love, exhale negative thoughts. That can work for some people. Maybe picture yourself at a place that is a safe place for you, a garden, the ocean, a lake, and see yourself in that place. That can help kind of calm you, bring calm to you. And I guess what I also want to say is something about forgiveness. It's very hard. Hold on, something is wrong with my. Hold on, I'm not. It's very hard for. She's left to live with her grandparents right now. Okay, thank you, Gail. Forgiveness is tough. We do the blame and shame game all the time. I should have done this. I must do that, and it just eats away at our self-confidence and our self-esteem. So what I'd like you to try to do, instead of criticizing yourself when you make a mistake or you do something you regret, is to say, I'm living and I'm learning. I make mistakes and I pivot. That is the truth of your life experience, okay? It's not about perfection. It's about accepting yourself and being good enough as you are. It's kind of like if you bake a cake, right? So the cake batter itself is delicious. It's great. People sometimes eat cake without frosting. The cake is good enough as it is. Sometimes they want to add some frosting. Sometimes they want to add decoration. That would be like what you're working on to make it better, to live more with more ease, with more peace. But the cake itself is still solid. It's delicious. Colleen, I'm sorry I keep getting your name wrong. Colleen says, I am safe and I am loved. Beautiful. Gail says, I'm thinking of this as a respite now instead of that she hates me. Fantastic. Respites between mothers and daughters are really necessary. Michael, I want to help people so much, it's getting too much. Right, so we want to stick with what we can do, what we're able to do, rather than, sometimes our appetites might be bigger than what we can actually eat and digest. Joanne says, I swim to get in touch with nature, just to float and breathe, defy gravity. Just camped in the woods for 3 days, grounding in the rhythms of nature, listen to live music to fill me up. That is awesome. So I would like you to really take some time when we finish now, before you go back to whatever else you're doing, and I would like you to do this. I want you to write down your 3 of your strengths. I want you to write down 3 things that you really love about yourself. No, that's not what I meant to say. Write down your strengths. Write down 3 things you could say to yourself when you're feeling bad. and what you could say to that little person inside of you. And then I'd like you to write down something you wish for yourself. May I be peaceful. May I focus on love instead of hate. Whatever it is that really helps you feel like you're living who you are meant to be, and not who you think you should be. And to that end, I just want to offer you in the comment section, it's a free downloadable on shame. I've offered this before. You can go to my website. It's about dealing with shame. I'd love you to take a look at that, because shame is toxic, and this is and shame eats away at your self acceptance and compassion. Joanne says, may I find joy daily. May I spread joy daily. Alethea, thank you so much for being there with us every Friday, whether we make it or not. You are such a blessing. Thank you, Alethea. I'm going to cry. I'm helping some. I don't always appreciate it, but I'm helping them. Yes, that's beautiful. I love that. I'm helping some that don't always appreciate it, but you're helping, and you are. You're welcome, Joanne. Let's see. So, if you want to share those things, remember strengths, what you'd like to say to your 10-year-old self with a skinned knee, and a prayer or a wish for yourself that you want to, focus on. I'd love you to take that with you away from this today. We won't be meeting for the next 2 Fridays, as Annie is on vacation, but I would love you to practice this, and when we meet again the first Friday of September, I can't wait to hear how you're doing with this. I really want to hear back from you. If you want to email me or Facebook message me, go ahead. You can contact me at Sharon at drSharonSaline.com. You can also message me on Facebook. I have a Facebook page at Dr. Sharon Saline. I'm on YouTube. I have a bunch of YouTubes. You can message me there. So I'll do my best to respond to your messages. I don't get to everyone all the time, but I do my best. And let me see, Gail said, I'm good with animals. God always loves me. I've always tried my hardest. I am a good person with different abilities. I love that. That is so beautiful. Thank you all for joining. You're welcome, Colleen. And may you all live with ease. And may you all accept your limitations with grace. And may you give the child inside of you, the 10-year-old, more hugs and less criticism. Have a great weekend. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.